Hello everyone and welcome to a very long overdue review/thoughts on System Shock Enhanced Edition. Kind of a legendary game for DOS way back in the day, made by the legendary Looking Glass Studios, whose other major works include System Shock 2 and the Thief games, or at least the first two Thief games, I think. So today I'll be talking about the semi-recently released System Shock Enhanced Edition to GOG and Steam and whatever digital distributor that you use. Basically, it adds a few new things to the game, but I'll get into that towards the end of what's new in Enhanced Edition. First, let's talk about the story, because I actually really like the story in this game. You play as a computer hacker that basically hacked into like a super mega corporation in the future called Tri-Optimum. You know you're a badass because you're hacking into super mega corporations. Except for the fact that you get caught a few seconds after hacking in and the police kick down your door. In exchange for not going to jail, one of the high-up execs of Tri-Optimum issues you a bargain. If you go to a space station and disable all of the restraints on an AI, he'll drop all the charges, as well as even throw in a military-grade cyber interface for you to continue your hacking. The hacker, of course, takes him up on the offer because spending the entire game in jail would be pretty boring. What ends up happening is you disable it, and then you go into cryosleep on that space station for a few months while the cyber interface is installed. And when you come out, you find out, of course, something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. Everyone seems to have been turned into crazy mutant monsters. The AI named SHODAN has gone completely insane, and it's up to you to put it all back right again. I really like this story because at its heart, this game is kind of a first-person shooter with a lot of new crazy elements. I don't want to say it's just a first-person shooter, because it really is not. But it does have that very old, original Doom/Wolfenstein 3D feel, and it really adds a lot to the story. It sets up the character, the character that I play as, the hacker. I can tell what kind of person he is just from the actions before the game even begins. Because even the hacker admits that, like, undoing the restraints on SHODAN is gonna be disastrous, but he doesn't care, because he's thinking, like, I'll be able to hack more super corporations with this for funsies. The characterization of an AI, I feel like this is as good as it gets, with the exception of maybe System Shock 2. SHODAN is done so well. You have this AI that was just a standard AI, and then the restraints come off, and you see her slowly transform into this being that starts thinking about things differently and sees herself as a god to rule over the Earth from her, like, space station overlord base. It's a really cool dynamic. SHODAN constantly is there. There's an oppressive feeling because you are walking through SHODAN, basically, as you're going through this space station, and it's just done so well. Even throughout the game, SHODAN is constantly sending you messages and email and talking to you about how you're not doing good enough. She's gonna beat you. She already has a new plan cooked up. She doesn't even care that you stopped your last one.
About what happened? It looks as if Diego has...
I prefer a quiet station. Thank you.
And it's just, it feels like you're battling a constant threat, and it feels great. As for the other bits of story, I want to say, and someone might correct me on this because there might have been games that did it before, but I want to say that this is probably the game. System Shock 2 probably brought it more mainstream, but this is probably the game that first popularized the audio logs everywhere mechanic that's seen in a lot of games nowadays, especially after BioShock did it. And by that I mean you'll find little audio diaries of everyone in the ship going about their day-to-day routines before everything went crazy and SHODAN basically took control of the ship. The thing is, this was a lot older game. The voice acting is meh at best.
Gunther was killed today. I can't let myself think about it.
It's not the quality that you see today. I wouldn't be surprised. It was probably done by the developers, actually. It's not bad. In fact, I think it adds to the charm, but something to be aware of if you can handle kind of cringeworthy dialogue a little bit. You might just want to stick to reading them instead of listening to them. And now to the gameplay. It is going to be very difficult to describe this, because just look at this HUD, guys. Look at how many buttons there are to hit here. It is absolutely incredible, and there's a learning curve to this game. You have to really like sit down and figure out like what each of these 20 buttons do, and basically let's get into what Enhanced Edition does. It adds a few more higher resolutions, which is nice, but for the most part it brings a little bit more modern controls to the game. The original game was basically you moved around with the mouse by clicking and holding at certain parts of the screen, which you can still do in Enhanced Edition. But Enhanced Edition allows you to hit the E key on your keyboard and move around kind of like a traditional WASD control setup you would see nowadays. That said, you still need to click on things constantly in the environment, so you need to hit E again, move your mouse to double click on whatever you need to do, and probably hit E again so that your controls aren't awful. It takes a while to get used to. It's not the worst thing I've encountered once you get used to it, but you gotta be willing to dig in and figure out how things work. And that's just how to move. There is a button to open up your emails, a button to open up your item slots. So there's like 4 different buttons to open up all sorts of different items. There's like 10 buttons on the sides of your screen that essentially are all of your cyber abilities, like running fast or a shield. Luckily, if you guys don't like the small view they give you, the Enhanced Edition also gives you the ability to bring it full screen. I personally actually didn't like it that much because it's pretty clear the game was meant to be viewed in that small window, funnily enough. It looks kind of weird in full screen. And you kind of get... having that ridiculously over cumbersome HUD gone somehow detracts from it. I can't explain it. I do like the over-designed HUD a little bit. So if you can make it past the controls and the weird HUD and all of that, and the fact that you gotta double click to pick up items when a single click would have been just fine and it drives you nuts, what kind of game can you look forward to? Well, if you played BioShock or System Shock 2 or one of those games, you probably know exactly what you're in for. It's very similar in design, but if you haven't, it's kind of like a first-person shooter with a few RPG-ish elements where you pick up items that enhance you as you go. Now this is a shooter more in the vein of the original Doom, because everything is 2D in this, pseudo 3D world. Actually, occasionally there are 3D models sprinkled in, which is really cool to see, and completely random. For the most part, you're stuck on this plane, but you have more control over your aim. You have an actual crosshair, and the crosshair isn't dead set in the center of your screen if you don't want it to be, which is strange. The weapons you pick up are awesome. There is actually a ton of weapons in this game, and you gotta really look around to find them, but it's totally worth it. You can't hold everything all at once, so you'll be swapping out new weapons all the time to see what the new ones are like. In addition to weapons, there's actually multiple ammo types usually for each gun, varying from like hollow point, like armor-piercing ones to regular bullets, to stun darts, to regular darts. Interesting mechanic that really was not seen at all in many games at the time. In fact, this was like a pioneer in my mind. Like, if you go back to this time period, this is where like so many original ideas started, was this game. This was just like a conglomeration of like every kind of cool idea they had in the boardroom. The shooting overall works really well in that old school Doom kind of way. Like, it's not gonna blow anyone's mind, but it's simple and fun enough to where it doesn't get that old. They do the horrible sin of making respawning enemies on some floors, and some floors it's alright, but then there's some floors like the basement engineering room where it's just abysmal. I mean, you like literally close the door and then I could like turn around and open the door again, there'd probably be an enemy on the other side. I think I could literally see them spawn on my radar sometimes. Now, in addition to shooting, you have various abilities that I kind of mentioned earlier to help you out that are along the sides of your HUD to activate. They range from lights to night vision goggles to speed boots. Speed boots that are like Heelys, by the way, because you can like skate on them. Jetpacks. All sorts of things to like help you out, and you'll be like activating them and deactivating them constantly because they take energy when they're running. If you ever played Deus Ex, it's actually very much the same thing as Deus Ex. I never really thought about it until now. I really like these cyber abilities because they add like a new dynamic to the game, and a lot of them are new and interesting things. Take the rear view mirror, for example. I've never seen this in a first-person shooter before, but if you want, you can activate it and you essentially have a view behind you at all times. And you can upgrade it so like it updates faster, because it's like takes a picture every so often. Really crazy feature. Like, I don't know who thought that up, but it's you know, it's not the most useful thing, but it's just a really cool idea. Enemy variety is pretty great, actually. You'll encounter probably at least one new type of monster per floor, if not more, and they keep them varied pretty consistently throughout. Now, as you're making your way through these floors, you always have an objective going on. Shodan's trying to blow up the world, or she's trying to, you know, kill everyone in some grand super way, or reshape the earth in her image. Some of the most entertaining points to this game are when you're doing something like you think you've won, you've beat Shodan, and she flips it around, the table gets flipped and says, nope, I didn't even care that you did that. As you're going through, there's like these set-piece scripted moments, and they might not be the greatest thing the second time around, but your first time through the game, where Shodan lays traps for you, they're spaced so well. They are not overdone in any capacity. Every time I just started to forget that Shodan was there, she would, you know, flip it around and set a trap for me. Or she even has a good sense of humor in this, for example, in this instance. Oh my god, that is physics-tastic. That is really cool. I'm glad that that's finally used. Oh god! Thank you! Look at that. That was like my favorite moment of the whole game. I felt like a boss for using like the Healy shoes to ramp off of that. And then she just throws it back in my face. Now that I've talked about the good things, I unfortunately have to go into the bad things. They have, I think this was probably going to be their premiere feature. This seems like something they would have really hyped up. You can go into cyberspace, and it's a fully 3D thing where you're like flying around this textureless wireframe world. And oh boy, is it disorienting. I got lost constantly, there's no direction, it's not explained well, and it's just not fun. Basically, every time you run into a virus or something you gotta destroy, it's just a mashing competition. Can you mash your mouse button fast enough to like deflect his bullets and hit him before he kills you? These were parts that just felt like a drag. You go in, and it's really exciting your first few times, and then as they start throwing more enemies at you, there's no way that I could tell to strafe. I mean, it's usually you just fly dead straight onto them. You don't get a very good view of the area. You're flying into things constantly that you don't know whether they hurt or help you. Is this like rotating rectangle good, or does it hurt me? Oh, this one's good. Okay, let's go into the lollipop. Oh, nope, that's bad. That hurts me. It's so unclear, and it's, since that nothing's textured, you'll just be like running into walls constantly. Thankfully, this isn't a huge part of the game. And I love the idea. See, this is why I say this is just a game of like crazy ideas thrown together. And I'm glad that they tried it. It didn't work out, and it was probably my least favorite part of the game. The great thing about this game is, and I feel like this is how every difficulty should be, at the beginning of the game, you get to set your difficulty on like each aspect of the game. You can set it to where you have like no story, like a straight Doom experience, I just want to shoot things. Or you can set it to where it's so story-based, you have a time limit before Shodan blows up the world. You can set combat to hardly any enemies, or crazy hard combat. You can set the puzzles to already all solved for you, or stupid hard. And you can set cyberspace. I think you can set cyberspace to just have everything done for you already. So if you don't like cyberspace early on, you could probably just start over real quick and say, yeah, I want to do that. Speaking of the puzzles, they're bad. There's one in particular, this wire minigame, that is, I don't think there's a rhyme or reason to it. It's just guesswork of just matching wires together until it fits and the door opens up. Really annoying. There are times as well that the game is very guilty of padding, and there's one part in particular that was just like really offensive to me, because throughout the game you have to destroy like security cameras and CPU nodes to unlock more parts of the ship, because they decrease Shodan's security level. There's this puzzle that basically just requires you to go backtrack to all the CPU node rooms that you've already been to if you didn't pay attention to something and was diligently taking notes about every room in the game. There's no reason for it. I mean, it's like I already destroyed the CPU node. It's not like I'm going back doing something new. There's no new enemies. The enemies are either not there or they're like weak enemies from the beginning of the game. It was such filler. I'm just going to let you guys know, if you play this puzzle so bad, I'm just going to give you the solution. Every time you go to a CPU node room, just write down on a sheet of paper what the number on a screen is. The screen can't be blown up. It's like the one screen in the room that can't be blown up. A number, it's different every time you play too, so you can't use a walkthrough. Just going to throw that out there. Some might say that's spoilers, but I'm saying it's going to save you guys time. Now, as for the presentation overall, I already kind of talked about the over-designed HUD. For some reason, I like it, but there's no reason why I should like it. It's not good. There's a few really nice little details that stick out to me in the presentation, too. Little things like when I'm firing a machine gun, my head actually kind of like bobs backwards a little bit, like it's an action movie, and I'm being pushed back by the sheer amount of bullets coming out of my gun. The textures on the walls all look great. The environments look fantastic for this time, by the way. Look at a game like Doom, where it's just like one texture slapped and repeated everywhere, it feels like. And look at System Shock, and it's like every floor is unique. Every floor has an identity. There is like the high up company exec floor, but then there's like the working man's engineer floor. There's the med bay where you start out, which is actually probably one of my favorite first levels in a game. That's one of those, this is a great way to learn the game and the mechanics of it. And the environment is just like spooky and eerie. Works out perfect. Overall, the graphics in game for this time were really good. I have to imagine you probably needed a supercomputer at the time to run this game. In fact, I love reading the old like manuals and stuff that came with my GOG version, because in there it's like, here's how you do memory management to get the most out of your 2 megabytes of RAM, because if the game doesn't start, you'll need to do this and this to like free up every last kilobyte. There's a lot of cool things. There's actually kind of like very rudimentary physics in this game, which is really cool. Like, you can throw items across the room and they seem to have a weight to them. The music, some tracks are really great, some are alright. A lot of it is eerie, like kind of thematic, because it's a little bit of a horror game in some regards too. Some sound effects are great, like when you hear in the distance like an enemy robot just being like, it's terrifying. And then some sound effects get just horribly annoying. Anytime I went into a radiation zone, there was just, oh, that was awful. The music, some of the music tracks were really awesome. And as always, I'll be playing my favorites throughout the video. Funny thing about these old DOS games is it's always going to sound different to everyone. I mean, and if you pick up Enhanced Edition, it'll sound the same to everyone. But if you played this game back in the day, everyone had a different sound card, so it's going to be hard for me to find the exact music to put in here. Overall, and by the way, so if you're wondering, I've played System Shock the original before. Is Enhanced Edition worth it? Is there anything new? I don't think they've actually added anything new to the game, guys. But if you want to play through it again, I would do Enhanced Edition, because you get better controls and everything like that. Now, if you are a purist and you absolutely want to play the game in its original form, luckily the GOG version gives you that option if you want. There's a separate install. I think they call it System Shock Classic. So you can do that too if you want. But I really recommend Enhanced Edition, because I just cannot imagine playing with those controls. Kind of final thoughts. This is a game that it's difficult to recommend in today's era. Like, if you're just looking to play a game that's easy to get into, it feels natural to like just get in and start playing, you know, kind of like what we've gotten used to with modern games, then it's hard to recommend this game. You have to be willing to put in the time to learn the convoluted controls of an age gone by to fully appreciate it. But if you can do that, then this is absolutely a game worth playing. if you want to see a game that pioneered, like you're interested in gaming history, you want to see the game that pioneered a lot of the things that are still used today in games, like audio log entries and like just a ton of mechanics, then this is like a trip down memory lane. And if you can handle like older games, this is absolutely a great one as well, if you're just interested in older games in general and you're not off put by them. So I do recommend this game with those things in mind. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it took a long time after I got done with the Let's Play. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Later, everyone.